so many mistakes. Bad moves. So much. But you aren't just that. Are you? You are. It's not the way you see it. Allow me to explain. I wish to leave this workshop to someone who knows his role for it. Not just some soulless businessman, there was in open feelings. Look at you, poor boy. Look at you. I think we can have some fun for a moment now. What are you talking about? Think about you. Think about you. No, I'll leave you alone tomorrow. Hasn't the entire project been in risk? What if we just give up and so we don't have to take no longer any risks? They eventually can't. What he said. I wish to leave this workshop suffering. You. It wasn't it? Theodore just woke up while having a confused mind due to the dream he just happened to saw. Now try to remember what really happened. Now I got it. Never thought that dreams can actually affect you. The young Trevor thought, and he took a look at his alarm clock that he almost never needed. But he still had it just in case. The clock was 4 a.m. A perfect time to wake up. Theodore started to think until he remembered. The day was Saturday. Because Theodore was not yet 80 years old yet, Roderick made a deal with him that he didn't have to work during the weekends unless Theodore wanted so. Another thing that Trevor remembered was today's visit to the docks, and that his mother talked something about going to the store of Claw Lake. A perfect combination, Theodore thought for a moment. Nothing else to do, so the younger Trevor raised from his bed and wore some more fancy clothes than usual. He found his pressed black trousers that he liked a lot to keep when he wasn't at work. Then he chose his collared shirt with golden roses here and there. Both these clothes were very old, but they had been under good care, because for the few times Theodore was willing to give credits to Elvira with his whole heart, were his skills at cleaning and sustaining clothes. Pleased with his choices, Theodore moved on to the kitchen and started to make some breakfast for himself, as well as he could. Theodore took some slices from the hair he cut yesterday and started to heat it with the cooker. The man's thought process was simple. Put some butter in the pan and take the meat to the butter. Then put the cooker on. Elvira started to make noise from her bedroom and rised up. Theodore thought that this time he doesn't need help, but Elvi still tried to push him aside until Theodore expressed his opinion on the matter. Elvira didn't look quite happy over the protest, but then she went back to sleep, because she wasn't the house's morning person. Few minutes in, and the breakfast has already been prepared. It was eaten almost as fast as it was done. Now, when Theodore had no work to do, no time to go for his usual hunt into outside nature, he decided to head towards the storage where the corpses were hanged. The bed shed was made completely out of concrete and plaster onto the inside. boring grey from top to bottom, but still it felt like a safe haven for the young Trevor. Theodore felt like it because hunting, with all of its side missions and post-work, reminded him of success. Success that he was the one who learned everything by himself. And whenever he was helped, he didn't have to get to remember all his swellings and trauma he went through. But what else Simon could have done, Theodore reasoned with himself, like he was silently trying to accept it all like he deserved it. Theodore started to cut the corpse of a deer he shot last week. The ideal time for hanging corpses was 1 to 3 days, but time simply wasn't always on his side, and because of it, the hanging time stretched a lot more than expected. The corpse was cut and then into different parts and separated. The hunter took the worst parts of the corpse and brought them to the house in a big box made of plastic. Along the way, he took a look at the storage that took Simon's life. One day when I'm done with everything else. While Theodore was telling that to himself, a snowfall began. This time the snowflakes were smaller and more powder-like compared to the first snow that was always a lot wetter and compact. That brought a thought for the Trevor to try and shovel the snow out of their building's roofs, just in case, so the snow won't press them to crumble. Theodore was right at his home's door until Elvira opened it right before him. Well, she had 2 clapper bags in her hand. "Oh, thank you," Theodore said to her mother. "You are welcome and bye-bye." Elvira replied back fast and started to walk towards the city of Claw Lake. So early on. Theodore thought and walked back to his home's warmth. It was until he looked at the clock, which showed to be already 6:50. A bit of a surprise. Time flies when it's about handworking. Put those pieces of meat in the fridge and wait until the time comes to visit, Theodore then decided to do. The boy's patience was a test here. When he had time to wait for something while all he could do is wait and sit down. Nothing to do, nothing to start for now. It was truly confronting. Until the clock started to move towards 9:30 a.m., Theodore decided to make his move and left the house. He took the sack where he took the part from the deer's tenderloins and went to the house's entrance. For this time, Theodore chose for his footwear a pair of recently planked leather shoes. Despite the shoes being old, they were used a lot and they were taken a good care. Because of those factors, they were just like brand new shoes. Theodore started to walk on the same road like he always did, but this time it was for a cause he wasn't certain at all. Talking and visiting a girl's house. What next? Theodore puzzled himself. But then he reassured himself with thoughts he made up yesterday. Complete denial of anything that could have sounded too positive. The boy was just too used to being disappointed with his skills and luck in many ways. When he finally was closing in the road cross that led to the Duck's villa, Theodore stopped and decided to wait a little if Lucia would appear at the cross a bit later than him. Through the time, the snowfall started to get stronger and stronger with the rising wind. Theodore felt it on his face and his view. Eyes had to be closed for a while so they won't get full in snow. And cheeks started to get more and more delicate to touch because of the cold air and wind. After a few minutes, someone appeared on the boat on the duck's village side, and Theodore immediately recognized her when the figure seemingly recognized Theodore from the other side of the road. She started to walk a bit faster, even run in the end. Theodore raised his right arm and started to closer the figure coming towards him, and so she did. "Good morning, Lucia," Theodore said when the two could finally hear each other. Good morning," Lucia said back while wiping snowflakes out of her hair. Rest of that road. Just come along with me," Lucia continued while pointing at her home. "Yes, of course," Theodore said back and started to walk through the snowy road, and Lucia came next to him and walked along. "Why didn't at first glance just walk up to our home? After all, I invited you," Lucia said to the boy next to her, in a bit jokey kind of tone. Theodore replied back, "Didn't we agree that we should meet at the crossing roads? I thought that our day would begin there." While Theodore tried to reason with his choice, he felt like something was not okay in him. Yes, we did. But still, my doors are open to you. No need to be so simple and formulaic. Just saying." Lucia replied even back. She didn't mean anything bad, nor was that statement meant to be specifically anything mocking. Despite this, Theodore still started to snap into his dream he saw in the morning. His eyes started to wide up, and Theodore's mouth started to look like he was disgusted about something. "Hey, Theodore, is everything all right? I didn't mean anything bad. You just stood up to the way of your thinking," Lucia said to Theodore regretfully, and even slightly frightened. "No, it just reminded me of something. Everything's all right." Theodore tried to regain his thoughts and head back together. Good. Let's enter our house then." As Lucia and Theodore chatted a bit while Lucia opened the dog's village door, they were greeted with a warm air from the house. Lucia swept still some snow from her hair, and Theodore took his hat off and hit it a few times to the village door, so the snow could fall off. Lucia took her scarf and jacket off, put them on the hanger. Theodore dropped his sack and did the same. Lucia catched on the sack's holdings and asked, "What you brought along with you? Never did I ask anything." "You didn't, but still I did, because I believe it's respectful." Lucia gave her smile to Theodore and said back to him, "You're right. But what do you have there?" "Allow me to show you," Theodore replied, and went to the house's kitchen, where he opened the sack, which would hold the deer's tenderloins. Lucia was astonished by this reveal, and she was so surprised that she couldn't even get any words from her mouth for a while. Theodore was the first time the one to speak for a change. "I got this one yesterday, and I thought I'd thank you for the invitation, bringing you the most wanted piece of meat from the game's corpse. Is it really true that you have taken this one by yourself? Really appreciate it after all. It's as if you're a professional butcher. Just looks like professional handwork." "I wouldn't go that far. It's just something I've been doing my entire life. And sure has paid off." The two talked to one another. Lucia started to get closer and closer at the look the tenderloins piece Theodore brought to them. She started to pack it again when Theodore got his hands off from it for a while. But then Lucia did what she really intended to do. She hugged Theodore and whispered to him, "No one else has ever done something like this to us during their visit. This is really remarkable, at least to me." Theodore couldn't believe what he just heard. Not like he never got any compliments, but in him getting such care and kindness. None of it has ever been like this. He was even about to shed a tear when Lucia pulled back a bit. She didn't completely let go, but took some distance, while slapping her hands on Theodore's wide and big shoulders. She looked into the boy she hugged, and saw a noticeable change in his behaving. That was truly nice of you. No one else had ever given me anything like that," Theodore said whilst a tear leaked from his eye, and his hands and his voice started to vividly shake. Lucia's look into Theodore's eyes went from happy and thankful to regretful and disappointed. She didn't quite understand why that hug was so big for Theodore. It was all right. Why such a sad look? Theodore managed to gather himself and close his big hands at Lucia's arms without really knowing what he was doing. Lucia then tried to get her smile again and asked, "Like this?" and gave Theodore another hug, this time almost even tighter one. She asked again, "Why is this one hug so big for you? I've never gotten something like this, especially from a girl. I just thanked you with my heart on it, but now I feel like something else is getting to me." Theodore interrupted her with a question similar wording to Lucia's question, if you'd like to put it like that. Theodore was still a bit hesitant what he should do here. Giving a hug back would sound like a good choice, but then he thought that it was all from gratefulness. So a hug back sounded for him like it was an inappropriate decision. But when he remembered Lucia's second saying out of her questions, Theodore thought and took a risk and gave some sort of a hug back. After that was done, Lucia said out loud back to him, "Oh, not so hard after all. Why you repulsed it?" I didn't. I really don't know. I really don't." After those words were said, Lucia got her sorrowful gesture again on her face. Theodore was so closed off to things like this. Well, even the man himself didn't know why. "Is everything okay?" Lucia tried to test Trevor a bit. She let go of her arms slowly to her back. It was all done slowly and carefully. When Theodore recognized these moves, he immediately got his arms back to himself, like he thought he shouldn't have done anything. Then Lucia pulled her arms back normally and took a step away from Theodore while instinctively having her face that told she was almost sad about something. "Why a face like that? Is everything all right?" Theodore said while his voice was still shaking and tried to get something different to think for himself. So he started to pack the tenderloins. Lucia gave her response to that question. After a few seconds, she got her face to normal again. "It all just sounds distant to me, that no one really seems to give you any credit." "I don't know anything else about myself getting thanks. At least before this day. I can guess why that's the way it is," Theodore said back. Lucia was puzzled about Theodore's seemingly apathetic view on his lack of social and mental support. Shall we get into more positive and do something together to cheer the atmosphere? I planned a lot for us outside the doors, but now the snowfall doesn't really show any mercy. So, what if we do something here, right here? Lucia suggested while she took one of the closest, some sort of green box on the cardboard. All right. What do you have here? Or what can be done? Theodore asked with a smile on his face. It's not necessarily a lot about doing, just being together and enjoying our company. Theodore was tested before at his limits of not showing embarrassment, shyness, and uncomfortableness. But after these days' events, he couldn't help it. And red spread around his face in a blink of an eye. Also, Theodore's expression turned from his normal, more or less calm to openly uncomfortable. He was pulled into a new world of sorts, which had nothing to do with duties or tasks. Something that was very uncertain and new. How he could be sure to make the right move or say the right thing when it was about making it easy and having fun. To make the matters even more uncertain, with a woman who wasn't yet the most familiar to the traveler. What is so awkward about all? It's just part of life, and especially in our age, to have fun, right? Lucia tried to reassure Theodore about the day. Excuse me. This all is just unknown for me. Trying new ground, of course. I'd like to try it out. The things you said are not something I'd usually hear. Theodore responded back while he was trying to get his insecurities out of his head. It really got difficult when he really didn't know what might await. I'll warm us some water and we make some tea out of it. Have you ever before drank tea? No, they are completely new for me. Okay, then take a look at this. Lucia started to make tea for the couple and Theodore was following it with seeming interest. After the water was warmed, Lucia filled two of the family's inherited luxury cups and put the tea sacks there. Waiting it to get ready, Theodore, who had never seen or tasted tea in his life, was fascinated how the process took place. It's now ready. Take the sack out from the water and try it out. Theodore sipped the hot tea a bit and felt something he has experienced only a few times in his life. Trying out something completely exotic. Where does this taste come from? I have drank hot drinks for once a year, but this is such a twist. Even from all these beautiful cups. How can I thank you enough of this? Says the man who brought actual self-made meat to us. Even so, Theodore kept sipping the tea while watched the outside of the house. A perfect contrast with everything. Outside was chilling, windy and cold. On the inside it was warm, steady and comfortable. Theodore had drank already about half of his tea, and the rest of it he swallowed with one go. Lucia was about to do her last sip before the tea was about to end with her as well. Lucia tried to offer something new once again. What if we'd talk about agriculture? We might have something to add there from each side. Oh, what else could I come up with? Our work over our farms are mostly done by father and his crofters. I do the nearest hectares. All of our men have their own horses, and I may borrow my dad's horse. He has even talked about buying a new tractor to his house. Our situation is not like that. We are not crofters, but really only a bit above that all. Sometimes You can see it as positive. After all, my work hours under the workshop service and the amount of work my mom can perform alone. Although I enjoy it more when I get to be outside and work almost completely on my own. I wouldn't be, for example, here if it wasn't for my place under Mr. Dark's service. What else? Well, for our horses, we had two of their necessary roles, but then they got too old, so we sold them to a horse breeder. We were promised to get one foal after the winter is over. Oh, did you say that you were starting to become the only capable worker for your household? Yes, through time. But I will find a solution to it, just like I have before. Theodore said, referring to the time after Simon died. Lucia couldn't help it but feel pity for her quest. He constantly had to be so tough and so much alone. Something that was for a Lucia a completely unheard. And you are about to do it all alone? Lucia still tried to reason with all that she has heard, not knowing that this only threw Theodore even further limits. If I have no other choice, what else there is to be done? Do I even know what or how it'll end up if I don't even try? Theodore answered, sounding just like the men from yesterday's dining now. Are you really so sure about it all? Alone? How else? Theodore replied back with even more determination. Lucia felt only more concerns over her new friend. Are you entirely sure? The challenges of being two places at once? I'm not so familiar with you yet, but all alone. Theodore's expression saw a change once again. Once he was about to gain his mask of self-control and calmness back, it got cracked once again, as this time sadness started to push through. He tried everything, closed his eyes, and turned his face downwards. All I can do, I believe, that then it's all of life, just like it always has been. No work, no time. Theodore tried to say without having his voice grab out of sobbing. Lucia wasn't having it. She was astonished of Theodore's asceticism, partially because she wasn't used to being constantly under sheer pressure over basic needs. But Theodore was pulling it all to extremes. Lucia realized that no amount of talk would change her quest, especially in one evening. So she came up with something different. Lucia waited some time before presenting the idea so it wouldn't be too obvious. What can you come up with when I really haven't prepared the day for this being constantly indoors? What if we do outside, despite the bad weather? Okay, doing a little trip into your lambs? Probably. Not too far though, because we could also shovel our yard open. I really could use help. All right, I'm interested to see some of your lambs, but I'll happily help your family. Hasn't he already done that? How much exactly? Lucia thought in her head, but they moved on. The snowfall started to change as the day went on. It started to let loose, and the wind was already way milder than in the morning. So the circumstances were also a lot more giving. Theodore and Lucia stepped outside of the Dark's villa, and they grabbed the shovels with them. to open the way to the field Lucia wanted to show for Theodore. This is the largest one on the east, the furthest from the west, or the closest one right there. Lucia was interrupted by Theodore's guesses. The two shoveled their way through the yard and went on a small road leading up to the field that was under Lucia's. Theodore, once he had figured out the route by himself, was actually the first one there. Why you? And what you wanted me to see here? Just the general look. Lucia pointed out in the sky, then moving her finger around. The sky was colored by the sun, which pushed through the cloud formations, and adding a pink and purple pigment to the mix. Then Lucia was pointing to the forests and rivers, which created the land changes of height and different sources of income. Theodore has always seen these kinds of landscapes before, him living here after all. But just by seeing and presented by someone else added its own charm in everything. After the landscape was presented, Lucia wished to tell her role in the family's fields specifically. I was still a little girl when this piece of land was given under my responsibility. Ever since I was 5, I have turned and collected the wheat that grows here. At first, I constantly needed help, but after a while it all started to get in order. And some other land pieces were also given under my responsibility. That is what I wanted to tell and show to you. Was it difficult to, also the downhill specifically, when you were still learning, or how hard is it now? No longer too much of a problem. Of course, the first time it was all about to get a little dangerous. Father had to intervene many times, and I even once almost fell down my place there. But it's all done for this year. Theodore's granted a bit surprised by Lucia's calm and careless way of how she described it all. So happy and ironic manner to present it all. Theodore didn't dare to ask anything else, so he kept silent for a second until he came up with something else. What if we move on to the village yard again? If we want to get it open, or did you, Lucia, get to say what you wanted? Let's move back home. The young duo walked through the starting positions and started to shovel the yard. The snow layers were about half a meter long, and so the shovels were almost full immediately, which meant that the snow had to be thrown around the yard's corners to get away. Theodore saw it with his left eye that Lucia was keeping almost after every single throw her shoulders out of exhaustion and pressure. Just like Mom. Theodore snapped and decided to raise his intensity. Just like home. When him and Elvira were shoveling, the dog's yard was very large, but with 2 people, it was handled almost in an hour. Theodore was at work, and performance the more active one, due to him having more strength in his arms, and him having more experience using a shovel at high intensity. Phew. That was it. Thank you, Arms, for that, Theodore. I guess you are correct, Theodore replied back, but you could easily hear the sort of disbelief and denial in it. Lucia then gave her last suggestion to her guest. Brr, I think you can agree that here is very cold, and our work was rough. I might need a warm up to it. Theodore didn't say anything to the suggestion, but then he thought that Lucia might be correct, and simply nodded to her. So the two moved back to the villa. Inside, Lucia brought Theodore to the living room and and Lucia introduced Theodore to sit on the couch. Oh, inside, Lucia brought Theodore to the living room and instructed the traveler to sit on a couch. Theodore was once again very pleased and grateful for the chance of luxuries, but it wasn't the first time of that, so he remained silent. Lucia sat next to him and took a woolly blanket for both of them. Lucia took a pillow for herself and son and offered one for Theodore as well. Theodore asked from his friend about this. What's the idea behind this? What are we doing? He asked while Lucia was offering a pillow for him. Let the warm heal and recharge you after the work of coldness, red cheek. Lucia teased Theodore a bit, while still trying to sound collected and wise. What? Why wouldn't they be red? When we came just right from the cold snowfall. You might be right. Just take a comfortable position and relax. These blankets are truly the most comfortable quality you can ever find. Lucia said and laid down like she was about to fall asleep. Theodore was still skeptical about relaxing, but he stayed shut. Through fascination, he wanted to find out which company had made these blankets and how. He couldn't find any caretaking lips or any sort of marking that might speak of something industrialization or no marketing. Was this blanket made by, well, who else? Theodore thought after his observation. Lucia felt so comfortable in the warmth that she would fall asleep without her even realizing it. After a while, she started to hear some loud noises. Some sounded like footsteps and some sounded like something heavy just fell off the ground. It all felt like they came from the outside of the house. It took some time before Lucia woke up to those sounds, but she was still not entirely aware of her surroundings. Lucia put her hand on the blanket and moved it towards Theodore. To her surprise, there was no one to be felt, and that snapped Lucia out of her bed. She also saw snow falling from in front of her windows. From the roof, of course. Lucia immediately understood what was going on and rushed outside of her home. She wasn't even wearing a jacket on the outside. It was all just so surprising and alerting. Lucia saw Theodore on the house's roof with a shovel once again. She shouted to the roof in confusion. What are you doing there? Why didn't you just stay with me in the house? When Theodore heard that, he realized he was caught up and thought that he isn't going to start screaming, especially from the roof. So he pulled back and came back from the roof to the ground. I just couldn't stop it. When I got the taste of work again, what are you doing? I thought we would rest under warm blankets and talk about something. Why you won't stop for a moment? Lucia interrupted Theodore with this time with even more frustrated and angry tone. I have never really stopped, and I couldn't stand the idea of resting in someone else's couch or someone else's blankets, and with someone else's pillow. All I was in terms of doing was serving my master of sorts. Theodore reasoned with his decision. Just come in and let's try it again. Just rest. There isn't anything wrong with it. Lucia said back and took a hold from Theodore's hand and brought him back to inside the villa. Back in the living room, Lucia tried to bargain Theodore to rest. What you find so so frighteningly about taking easy. Theodore didn't respond anything, but just to get Lucia quiet for a question about the subject. He did as Lucia wished. They're not so hard. There's no one you have to impress with your work, Lucia complained to Theodore when she put her hand on Theodore's forehead. It was so cold that she couldn't believe that was human's forehead. She just couldn't believe that she was touching something so cold from a human. You're cold. Didn't you know that? Lucia said while still trying to comfort him. Theodore took her hand off and replied back, I don't believe I deserve that. Know this. Forgive me. You start to sound like a machine. What is this? Just sit down and let yourself calm down. Okay, I'll try. After 2 minutes, Theodore was getting more and more distressed. But then he managed to finally contain it and be just around and rest. All of it was so alienating. He never really got such compliments, such as this day. He was never asked to rest. He was never really offered any sort of comfort that would be considered more special. He took one deep breath and managed to get calmer. I can get used to this, he still thought, and Lucia presented to him a rhetorical question. Not so bad. What was so uncomfortable after all? Lucia said and put her hand on Theodore's forehead again. This time there was no resistance to it. Just for this day, Theodore whispered something to himself. What? Excuse me, what did you say? Nothing. I'm just pleased by your givings. Lucia sat next to Theodore for the last time during the day. She wanted to still know more about why Theodore was the way he is. But then she'd had to gain his complete trust. Did you like this day? Were my plans any good? Lucia asked. You have organized your ideas very well. And I am very grateful for this chance you have given to me. Theodore replied and held a humble tone. You don't need to thank me, especially after your work was done. Lucia certainly leaned towards Theodore's shoulder and put her head resting on the tremor. Theodore didn't know what to do or say for such an act. That he just sat quietly, barely blinking his eyes, while red was spreading around his head. I'm glad to hear that you like the day. If you'd love to visit us again, let me know. Yes, just as we spoke about it. Do you wish to visit us in some time? Yes, I'm interested. Theodore took a look at the clock and realized that it was already about 4 p.m. and all the red suddenly disappeared. He whispered to Lucia's ear about his plans, and that when he thought to leave. I believe I have to leave in these minutes. If you want to ask something, you can still do it. Theodore stated and stood up from the couch, leaving Lucia almost completely supportless, and so she fell down. She only giggled and raised up from the couch as well. Okay, I had a sweet time with you. You helped me and gave me company I rarely even had. Theodore nodded to her and headed towards the entrance. Lucia already said her goodbyes, and Theodore was about to put his shoes on and say his goodbyes until he saw a portrait of the dog's family. The portrait had Mr. Dog in it, with hairs this time, and a woman who looked a bit like Lucia. But the age didn't match quite. Roderick and the woman looked way younger in the picture than in the present time. Could she be Mistress Dog? Theodore thought. But then he asked himself another question. Where is she now? We don't know, but Theodore collected his head and said goodbyes and left the villa. The weather was again turning into more colder when the sun started to ascend, so Theodore decided to hurry back home before the darkness. And back home, he had no work to do anymore. Lucia was staying in the couch under the same blanket as she wanted to. Lucia was still very puzzled how she could properly gain the boy's trust and open the locks he held in his hand. Then she got an idea how to do it. She went to her room and she went to her mother's room that was used for textile works. 5 minutes later, Roderick arrived back home and he immediately tried to find Lucia so he can present some questions for her. Theodore, back in his home, had to see a surprise when he realized that Elvira still hadn't returned from the Claw Lakes market. But he couldn't help it and started to do his own decisions for the evening, so he did. Theodore shoveled the snow out from all the 4 roofs the travelers had, 3 storages, and the house itself. Luckily, they were all fairly small, and so the work was fairly easy. Theodore also opened his home's yard and went to the bay shed to cut the rest of the game he had there. Simple and fast. Simple and fast. It all felt like it when Theodore was alone. Everything during the day up to this point felt exciting, new and happy. Now it feels like the basic routine. No new to be learned, nothing to be mastered, just repeating patterns that were already familiar. After all of it, Theodore went back to his house and just stood in the entrance. He felt something he thought he had a duty to push away. Affection. Affection that went deeper than just friendship. He wasn't able to describe it, because he always tried to deny it all, and that he didn't deserve it. Theodore was trying to suppress and deny it all, but it got harder and harder, and as he couldn't even describe the feeling properly, he didn't even know what to do with it. Theodore went to the kitchen of the house and prepared some food for himself, but all was once more tasteless. He felt like something awakened inside his head. There was still empty, blank slate, waiting to be fulfilled. Elvira had arrived at the house. After minutes, Theodore had arrived and started to prepare sort of a dinner. It was all over for the evening, at least how Theodore felt it. All over. He was so filled with conflicting thoughts that he remembered almost nothing from the evening. Hope tomorrow brings me another brighter head, he thought. To be continued.